Title: Veil of Realms. Chapter 1: The Whispering Grave. Tong Yang rode through the rain-slick fields, his black cloak heavy with the weight of water and secrets. The red sash at his waist fluttered behind him like a streak of flame in the storm winds, a silent herald of the power he dared not unleash. Beneath the black veil covering his face, his eyes burned quietly, waiting for the day they would blaze crimson and awaken the truth he had hidden even from himself. He was the supreme god-ruler of the three realms, earth, heaven, and hell, but no villager who watched him pass suspected it. To them, he was merely a wandering shaman, a healer, a protector who rode a black steed from village to village, offering salvation where others saw only doom. His current mission had come from Maya Vang, his wife in the mortal realm. Earth princess and ruler in her own right, she had sent him word of a village near the Whispering Woods, cursed by a malevolent ghost. A young girl buried alive, her vengeful spirit now roamed, slaughtering livestock and dragging children from their homes. Tong arrived at the edge of the haunted village just as the sun bled into the horizon. He dismounted, boots sinking into the muddy earth. Around his neck hung a silver rattling circle tool, an ancient charm that sang softly when spirits drew near. In his right hand he gripped his one-hand sword, black steel etched with runes that throbbed faintly under his gloved fingers. The air grew colder. She appeared as a silhouette at first, the ghost of the girl. Long hair matted with soil, white eyes hollow with rage. Her mouth stretched open in a silent scream as she lunged at him. "Your pain is real," Tong murmured, voice steady. "But vengeance will chain you to this suffering forever. Let me bring you justice. Let your soul pass in peace." But the ghost shrieked and attacked. The fight that followed shook the earth. Tong's spells chanted low and fast, his blades slashing through fog and shadow. His veil darkened, but when he cast stronger incantations, the edges shimmered red, a warning of the godly power threatening to surface. Each strike he landed weakened the spirit, but she was clever. She wailed like an innocent child, tears streaking her broken face, and as Tong hesitated, her hands shot forward, grasping his throat. Dark tendrils of cursed energy spiraled around him, draining his life force. His vision blurred, the power within him roared, desperate to break free, to reveal himself, to obliterate her. But then, light tore through the darkness. Maya Vang appeared, her presence radiant and commanding. With a wave of her hand, golden flames erupted and consumed the ghost, shattering her form into whispers on the wind. Tong collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath, saved from revealing his divine self to the mortal world. Later, as they cleansed the village and uncovered the cruel elders who had buried the girl alive, justice was served, the balance restored. But there was no rest for Tong Yang. Maya approached him under the pale light of dawn. "Your journey isn't over. Padalor, your wife in heaven, calls for you. There is unrest in the celestial court. She cannot hold the throne without your aid." Tong's heart, already heavy, grew heavier still. He mounted his black horse once more and turned toward the dark forest, where a forgotten temple hid a portal to heaven. The wind caught his red sash, and his veil flickered crimson, a reminder that no matter how far he ran, the god within was always waiting. Chapter 2: The Forest of Trials. The path to the temple was no simple road. It was a crucible meant to test even the strongest. As Tong Yang crossed into the black forest, the trees grew dense and twisted, branches like claws blotting out the sun. His red sash whipped behind him, and his silver rattling ring hummed softly, a warning he knew all too well. He was not alone. From the undergrowth burst a massive form, a demon tiger, black as night but with stripes that bled like fresh wounds. Its eyes glowed with raw bloodlust, fangs long enough to pierce a man through the heart. With a roar that shook the earth, the beast lunged. Tong's sword flashed, parrying the strike, while his rattling ring sang loud, sending out waves to weaken spirits. But this was no mere spirit. It was muscle and magic fused, sent by darker forces to halt his advance. Blow after blow Tong fought, But the tiger's sheer power battered him back, each strike tearing through his defenses. Blood splattered the ground where Tong stood, and for every step forward, he was pushed 2 steps back. His body screamed with pain, but his eyes stayed cold beneath a dark veil that now shimmered faintly red. Finally, as the tiger pinned him against a crumbling tree, jaws wide to tear him apart, Tong exhaled a breath he had hoped not to use. His form rippled, bones snapping, muscles twisting, until standing where the man had been was a black tiger, larger, darker, and far more dangerous than the demon before him. His eyes blazed red through the gloom. The demon tiger recoiled. "Who are you? Where did you learn this form?" It growled. Tong's voice, low and rumbling through his beastly throat, answered, "Return to the shadows. I do not wish to take your life." But the demon only laughed, wild and hungry. The battle resumed, claw against claw, fury against fury. The forest quaked, trees splintering and earth shattering, and in the end, it was Tong who stood over the fallen beast, his black fur matted with blood not all his own. The demon tiger lay broken, defeated, and vanished into mist. Tong shifted back, his body battered and worn, but his path was not yet clear. Further ahead, he met an old man with a hunched back and trembling hands, leaning on a twisted cane. "Kind shaman," the man rasped, "help me. I seek the temple too, but these woods are unkind to an old soul like me." Tong's silver ring rattled, softly but steadily. His eyes narrowed behind his veil. He knew. This was no helpless elder, but the man-eating ape demon with a chest stained red from centuries of slaughter, his eyes burning crimson even when disguised. "Come along, elder," Tong said coolly, playing the game. He led, and the old man followed, always a step behind, watching, waiting. When the trail narrowed, the old man struck. His form expanded grotesquely, fur sprouting as he lunged, teeth wide to devour Tong whole. But he met steel. Tong's sword jammed hard into his maw. Impossible. The ape choked. "How did you know? Your blood reeks of death. Your trickery is old." Furious, the ape attacked in earnest. The battle raged for hours, the ape regenerating each time Tong landed a killing blow. Limbs severed only to crawl back and reattach, flesh torn only to knit anew. Frustrated and bloodied, Tong paused, and then understood. The ape's power fed from Earth's dark energy. Only fire could cleanse it. Summoning deep, Tong called forth a fire elemental guardian. Flames erupted, swirling into a lion-shaped blaze that pounced on the ape. Screaming, the demon burned, his body unable to reform. When the ashes settled, the forest grew silent once more. But Tong's journey wasn't done. At the temple gates, coiled around the sacred pillars, waited the guardian, a water dragon, scales shimmering like liquid sapphire. Her beauty was dangerous, her power even more so. She had devoured hundreds to ascend, and now her golden eyes fixed hungrily on Tong. "One more soul and I will become a queen of rivers," she hissed. "Yours will do nicely." Tong raised his hand. "Stand aside, and I will spare you." She roared and lunged, her body crashing like tidal waves against the temple steps. Tong fought, sword clashing against scales, his silver ring tightening around her sinuous form. But she was too strong, too angry. With each blow, the earth shifted, landslides tumbling down as her storms raged. Lightning split the sky, rain lashed down, and Tong found himself slowing, wounded and cornered. His veil flared bright red. There was no choice. Tong's voice thundered ancient words, summoning a force beyond mortal realms. From the sky, a bolt of godly purple lightning, pure, divine, and absolute, struck down. The dragon shrieked as the holy storm tore through her, shattering her body and soul. As the storm calmed, she lay dying, trembling. "Who are you?" "To command heaven's fury," she gasped. Tong stepped forward, his veil lifted slightly so she could see his eyes that gleamed with godhood. "I am the supreme ruler of the realms. Your punishment ends here." With a final chant, he reincarnated her spirit into that of a young snake, granting her a chance at redemption. She slithered away, no longer a monster, but something reborn. Bruised, battered, but victorious, Tong Yang stepped into the temple's heart. The portal shimmered before him, a gate to heaven where his wife Padalor awaited amidst celestial turmoil. He took a breath and stepped through the veil between worlds. Chapter 3. Shadows over Heaven. The golden skies of heaven shimmered as Tong Yang stepped through the portal, but the welcome he received was colder than the void between realms. At the gates of the celestial capital, towering structures of jade and pearl gleamed under the eternal sun. The gatekeepers, 3 immortals clad in radiant armor, blocked his path with halberds crossed before him. Their eyes, once filled with reverence for emissaries of the heavens, now glinted with suspicion and quiet malice. "State your purpose, mortal," the lead gatekeeper sneered. Tong kept his veil low and calm. "I bear the mark of heaven's ruler herself," he said, revealing the sigil burned into his palm, a divine seal granted by Padalor, his wife and queen of heaven. It pulsed faintly, proof of his authority. But the guards only smirked. "That mark means nothing now. The tides shift, stranger. Heaven belongs to new powers." Tong's jaw tightened. He couldn't afford to blast his way through and leave the gates unguarded. That would open a breach between heaven and earth, a catastrophe. So he chose a subtler path. With a flick of his wrist, he conjured enchanted coins and rare incense that shimmered with divine energy. "Perhaps," he said softly, "we can find another way to resolve this." The gatekeepers exchanged greedy glances. Corruption had already seeped deep. "Fine, you may pass. But be quick, mortal." Tong entered, his heart heavy. The rot in heaven was worse than he feared. The capital sparkled, ivory towers and floating gardens, waterfalls spilling into rivers of light. But beneath the splendor, whispers of rebellion slithered. Tong moved like a shadow through the streets, listening, watching, and soon he found what he sought. In a forgotten alley near the Lotus Bazaar, he overheard whispers. Some immortals, once proud defenders of heaven, now conspired with high demons from hell. Greed, ambition, and ancient grudges had festered, and now they plotted to overthrow Queen Padalor and seize the heavenly throne. Tong's eyes narrowed. He infiltrated their ranks, masking his divine aura and joining their secret meetings. Piece by piece, he unraveled the plot, tracing the strings back to their master, a powerful celestial demon known as Lord Karos, a traitor of old reborn in secret. The lair of Karos lay hidden atop a floating mountain, veiled in storm clouds and guarded by demon spawn. When Tong finally confronted him, Karos lounged on a throne of bones and gold, his black horns curling like snakes, wings tattered but thrumming with dark power. "Who are you, mortal?" Karos spat. "You fight like an immortal but stink of the earth. Why lower yourself to crawl among us?" Tong said nothing. His sword was his answer. "You've soiled heaven long enough. Today, I erase your stain." The demon laughed and snapped his fingers. Minions swarmed from the shadows, twisted spirits and corrupted immortals, but Tong dispatched them with swift spells, barely breaking a sweat. Bolts of light, fire sigils, and cutting winds danced at his command. But Karos was no simple foe. He rose, wings spreading wide, and his fists crackled with hellfire. The true battle began. They clashed with such force that the temple crumbled around them. Blades of light met claws of shadow. Their fight spilled out, soaring into the skies, crashing from the temple ruins to the floating mountains above. Each blow split clouds and rattled the heavens. Karos countered every move, his dark energy blasts tearing through Tong's defenses. One blast struck true, sending Tong crashing into a mountain face, blood staining the sacred stones. "Weak," Karos mocked. "Your soldiers will fall, and you will die nameless." The demon summoned a horde of minions to finish Tong, but the shaman was not done. Gritting his teeth, he called upon his spiritual soldiers, spectral warriors of old, armored and loyal. They clashed in midair, spirit against demon, heaven against hell. Yet the tide turned against Tong. His soldiers, noble but mortal bound, fell one by one, torn apart by the demon horde. Tong's strength wavered, his body bled, and his soul flickered. "Is this the end?" Karos jeered. "No." Tong's eyes flared. He reached deep, unlocking the seal on his godly power. Just a fraction. Enough. His chant echoed like thunder. "By the command of the supreme ruler, rise." Golden light engulfed his soldiers, transforming them into enhanced beings of divine wrath. Tong's own wounds closed, his aura blazing. The battle turned. The demons faltered, and Karos's sneer twisted into fear. "No," the demon whispered. You're him, the god of 3 realms." He fell to his knees. "Forgive me, supreme ruler. I did not know." Tong stepped forward, his voice cold and final. "Strip your power, return to hell as a mere shadow, serve 1,000 years of penance, and perhaps then you'll earn a place again." Karos, trembling, nodded. Yes, my lord." He turned as if to leave, wings dimmed, but treachery ran deep in his blood. In an instant he whirled and launched a soul blast, striking Tong's spirit directly. Pain lanced through Tong as his soul was ripped from his body, hovering, fading. His limbs collapsed, his heart slowing. Death crept near. "Die, forgotten god." Karos roared, gathering power for a final blow. Tong's vision blurred, but he summoned the last spark of his divine core. His soul flared, chains of godly light snapping into place. With a primal scream, he forced his soul back into his body, light bursting out as the chains wrapped around Karos's soul, binding him to the mountain itself. Weakened, Tong stumbled. He lacked the strength to finish the demon entirely. His godly power strained to its limit. Karos, still bound, grinned one last time and unleashed a desperate, massive blast, aimed to annihilate both himself and Tong. But salvation arrived in a blaze of celestial radiance. Pada Lor, Queen of Heaven, descended from the skies, her divine spear flashing like a falling star. She struck the demon's blast midair, shattering it into stardust. Her presence banished the darkness instantly. "You dare touch my husband?" she thundered, her eyes burning with imperial wrath. Tong, barely standing, smiled weakly under his veil as his wife took her place beside him. The battle was over, but the war for heaven had only just begun. Chapter 4: Storm Before the Inferno. The skies over heaven rippled with unstable light as Queen Pada Lor stood over the shattered remains of Lord Karos's power. Her golden spear still hummed with residual energy, while Tong Yang, battered but standing, pulled his veil tighter, hiding the godly glow that still flickered in his eyes. "You should have summoned me sooner," Pada Lor scolded, her voice sharp but laced with worry. "Look at you, nearly torn apart." Tong smiled faintly. "If I called too soon, they'd suspect. I had to see how deep the rot goes." She lowered her weapon, her proud face shadowed with unease. "It goes deeper than even I feared." With Karos bound to the floating mountain by divine chains, the immediate threat had passed. But heaven's capital was still a nest of vipers. Tong and Pada retreated to her private palace, an opulent tower of silver and sapphire that floated above the heavenly gardens. There, Tong's wounds were treated by immortal healers, while whispers of his battle spread like wildfire. But in secret chambers, rebel immortals hissed and plotted. The failed coup had only been the beginning. Later that night, in the Hall of Heavenly Records, Tong and Pada gathered intelligence. Scrolls, maps, and divine compasses floated around them, revealing patterns of corruption. Tong's silver ring rattled softly, warning of unseen dangers. "Look here," Pada said, pointing to the charts. "Celestial gates along the eastern sky are weak. Patrols are missing. My generals claim it's an accident, but these are no coincidences." Tong's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just heaven. Some of these energy traces, they reek of hell's signature. Demons from hell working with my own immortals?" Pada's fists clenched. "Blasphemy." Tong leaned back, his mind racing. Karos was a pawn. Someone from below, someone far greater, is feeding this rebellion. They want heaven and earth to fall. His thoughts flickered to his third wife, Nina View, Princess of Hell. If high demons were moving this boldly, Nina would already know. And if they were acting against both heaven and earth, it meant the balance between the three realms was crumbling. By dawn, Tong and Pada devised a plan. Tong would stay hidden, continuing his infiltration to root out the remaining traitors in Heaven's court. Pada would summon loyal generals and close the eastern gates before more demons slipped through. But the enemy moved faster. Before noon, word came that rebel forces had seized the Sky Bridge, the main route connecting Heaven's capital to the lower realms. If they secured it fully, they could summon armies from Hell directly into Heaven. They're accelerating their plans, Tong growled. We must strike now. Pada nodded. We'll cut off their head before they summon more filth. That evening, Tong led a covert strike. Disguised once again in his humble black robes and red sash, he infiltrated the rebel stronghold near the Sky Bridge. His magic concealed his godly aura, and his rattling ring remained silent, waiting. The battle was swift and brutal. Tong unleashed spells that turned rebel soldiers into ash. His blade danced, severing demonic limbs and silencing traitorous immortals. Each foe he struck down brought him closer to the heart of the conspiracy. At the summit of the Sky Bridge, he found them, a circle of high-ranking immortals and demons performing a summoning ritual. Black flames licked at the sky, forming a gate wide enough to bring through an army. Tong's voice cracked like a thunderclap. This ends now. The rebels turned, some recognizing him, too late. Tong hurled talismans that exploded in divine light, shattering the ritual circle. Demons shrieked as the portal collapsed in on itself. But at the center stood another foe, General Raijin, once a trusted immortal commander, now twisted by dark pacts. His power radiated chaos and lightning, fueled by both heaven and hell. So, Raijin sneered, the supreme god hiding as a mortal shaman. I wondered when you'd crawl from the dirt. Tong's eyes flashed dangerously, his identity slipping through his mortal facade. You know too much. Now you must fall. Their battle cracked the sky. Tong's spells and sword met Raijin's unholy lightning. Each strike echoed like a storm, shaking the heavens. The Sky Bridge cracked and crumbled beneath their fury. Raijin summoned shadow beasts, but Tong's spiritual soldiers clashed against them, flames and light battling darkness. But as the fight raged, Tong sensed a deeper presence, something watching from beyond the collapsed portal. A presence old and vast. Hell itself was stirring. Raijin fell defeated and broken, but with his dying breath he laughed. You think this is over? The real master comes. Nina View will betray you, and then all three realms will burn. Tong stood over him, shaken. Lies, he muttered, but doubt clawed at him. He gazed toward the distant sky where heaven met the void, and his thoughts turned to Nina, his wife in hell. Was she friend, or had she been drawn into this chaos too? Padalor arrived then, victorious but weary. The Sky Bridge is ours again, she said. But the enemy knows who you are now, husband. There will be no more hiding. Tong's heart grew heavy. Then let them come. If war must consume the realms, I'll end it myself. But in the shadows of the void, the true enemy smiled, for the real war was only beginning. Chapter 5. The Spear of Heaven. Heaven's skies had calmed, but tension still clung to the air like a storm waiting to break. In the crystal court, Queen Padalor stood before her husband, her golden armor gleaming. Her face was fierce, but beneath her royal poise, Tong could see the weight pressing on her. Husband, she said, voice low but firm, heaven's order will crumble again unless I hold the heavenly spear. Only then will the immortals kneel without question. Only then will they remember who their true ruler is. Tong Yang nodded slowly, his black veil rustling as he moved. The Spear of Heaven, it rests in the 12th heaven still? Yes, Pada said, but none have retrieved it in an age. The trial will destroy anyone unworthy. Tong's eyes darkened. 12 godly lightning bolts. Only a pure soul can survive. Pada's hand found his, squeezing tightly. Don't do it if you'll die. But Tong only smiled faintly. It's no big deal. The ascent to the 12th heaven was no ordinary climb. Tong passed through celestial gates guarded by ancient beings, dragons of starlight, phoenixes with feathers of flame, and golden lions whose roars could shake worlds. At each gate, they challenged him, demanding proof of purity. Tong, veiled and humble, answered not with pride but with deeds. He spoke of saving villages, easing spirits into peace, and refusing to let power corrupt him. Finally, he stood at the summit, before the altar of lightning. Above him, dark storm clouds churned, golden bolts crackling inside, each one a godly strike capable of obliterating lesser immortals. "State your purpose," a voice boomed from the sky. Tong stood tall, his black robes whipping in the storm wind. "I come for the spear of heaven. I will endure the trial." The sky split with laughter, ancient, testing. Then faced the judgment of the 12 strikes. The first bolt came down like a falling sun. Tong's body shuddered, his skin burning, but he gritted his teeth and stood firm. The second and third struck faster, tearing into his soul. The pain was unlike any battle wound. It reached deeper, into the fabric of who he was. By the sixth bolt, even seasoned gods watching from afar whispered that he would fall. No one had survived beyond 6 in millennia. But Tong stood, veiled and silent. Inside, he unlocked the sealed core of his divinity, the truth that he was not just a mortal, nor even just a god, but the supreme ruler of all 3 realms, the very being who had created this spear ages ago and left it behind. Bolts 7 through 11 rained down, mountains cracked, the heavens shuddered. Blood streamed from Tong's mouth, but his eyes blazed golden behind the black veil. The 12th bolt descended, not gold but purple, godly thunder meant to erase existence itself. Tong raised his silver rattling ring, not to defend but to channel the force. When the lightning struck, it wrapped around him, and then bowed. The storm broke, light returned, and there, embedded in the altar, was the heavenly spear, 12 feet long, its shaft pure white gold, its blade crackling with sealed storms. Tong stepped forward, grasped it, and it willingly lifted into his hand. It glowed in recognition, as if returning home. When he returned to the capital, every immortal gasped. He survived 12 strikes. No one has done this since the ancient ruler. Could it be? Tong ignored them. He walked through their whispers and presented the spear to Pata Lor. She rushed to him, eyes wide with shock and fear. "Husband, how did you must have suffered horribly." But Tong only smiled beneath his veil. It was no big deal. Her hands trembled as she took the spear. The moment it touched her palms, her power magnified tenfold. The rebellious immortals watching from the shadows knew then their coup was over. No one would dare challenge her now. With the spear, Pata cleansed heaven in a single day. Traitors were exposed by the spear's light, purified or cast into exile. The balance of power shifted instantly. Heaven was whole again, and yet Tong's gaze turned south, to where dark clouds gathered beyond sight, in the deepest pits of hell. Pata, though victorious, knew his heart. "Your next journey, you must go to hell now to see Nina, to end this rebellion before it spreads further." Tong nodded. "Earth is calm for now. Heaven is safe. But hell, I fear its fires are rising." She gripped his hand tightly one last time. "Be careful. Even your wife in hell may not be what she once was." And so, with little rest, Tong Yang descended back to earth, his black horse waiting patiently. Climbing into the saddle, he rode toward the shadow marshes, where the gate to hell awaited. Behind him, heaven shone bright once more, cleansed by his wife's newfound power. Ahead, the underworld's fires flickered, hungry for souls, and perhaps hungry for the supreme god who dared hide as a mortal. His journey into hell was about to begin. Chapter 6. The Betrayal in Hell. The gates of hell groaned open as Tong Yang crossed into the underworld. The air turned thick with ash, and the sky bled crimson. All around him, hungry souls clawed at the blackened ground, their hollow eyes turning toward him with desperate hunger. "Save us, please," they moaned. Demons with twisted horns and long fangs lurked in the shadows, waiting for lost souls to stumble. Tong's black veil fluttered, turning deep red as he summoned his power to repel them. Some souls he recognized, those he had helped on Earth. "You do not belong here," he whispered, and with a flick of his silver rattling ring, he opened a small portal of light. The lost souls ascended, weeping in gratitude, escaping their torment. But every act of salvation drew the gaze of greater darkness. The first evil, the fire giant. As Tong pressed deeper into hell's scarred lands, the ground quaked. Out of the lava pits, the first prime evil appeared. A fire-breathing giant, horns twisting from his head like black iron, teeth gnashing as he roared. "You!" the giant bellowed. "I will rule earth and hell alike! You will die here, little shaman!" Without warning, the giant swung a massive flaming sword, each strike sending rivers of molten rock tearing through the land. Tong met him head-on, his silver ring and sword clashing with steel and flame. The battle raged for 7 days and nights, neither yielding. Each time Tong's blade slashed flesh, the giant only laughed and regenerated. Each time the giant's sword swung, Tong was driven back, his body seared and torn. On the 7th night the giant's sword cut deep, a wound that even Tong's divine essence struggled to heal. He stumbled into a cave, blood leaking from his mouth. For 1 day, he hid and recovered, his godly power knitting his body back together at the cost of draining his strength. Why does the giant wield a blade made of ancient celestial steel? Tong wondered. Only Nina has access to such material. Could she betray me? The thought sickened him. But with no other choice, Tong prepared for one last battle. This time, he used cunning, not force. When the duel resumed, Tong focused on parrying every strike instead of attacking. With each clash, he secretly inscribed glowing runes onto the giant's sword, changing its ownership. At the final moment, the enchantment flared. Tong lunged and severed the giant's arm, wrenching the sword free. With the enchanted weapon now his, he sliced the giant into pieces, preventing regeneration. The giant, bleeding out, gurgled, "How?" Tong stood over him, voice cold. "Because I never told my wife the sword can be bound through rune ownership. I just took it from you, the second evil, the demon bird." As he advanced toward Nina's castle, Tong spotted a small girl's soul lost and weeping. "Help me," she whispered. Without hesitation, Tong lifted her up, opened a portal, and sent her soul upward to heaven's gates. But the skies darkened as a massive shadow descended. A demon bird, black as night, with glowing red eyes. "You took my prey," the bird shrieked. "I am the second of hell. With 3 cries I take ownership of all souls." The bird's first cry hit Tong like a hammer, making his vision blur. The second cry made his very soul tremble, as though it wanted to flee his body. When the third cry rang out, Tong fell to his knees, his soul half detached, vulnerable to being devoured. But at the last moment, Tong slammed his rattling silver ring against the ground, forming a barrier that blocked the soul-rending sound. He rose, eyes burning red beneath his veil. His sword ignited with crimson light, matching the hue of his veil, now fully flared. With a roar, he leaped and sliced the bird demon into bloody pieces, ending its reign over lost souls. The final betrayal, Nina view. But the worst awaited him. Near Nina's castle, instead of another demon, Nina herself stood at the gates, her form dark, her eyes cruel. Tong stopped, heart heavy. "Wife, what is the meaning of this?" Nina's voice was sharp as daggers. "No more will I kneel beneath you, Tongyang. I will rule the 3 realms." She attacked first, her claws laced with dark energy, her strikes meant to kill. Tong parried, blocking and dodging, confusion eating at him. "Why?" he gasped, even as she battered him with blasts of demonic force. Her claws pierced his stomach, and as Tong grabbed her throat, blood pouring from his lips, he rasped, "Is this truly what you want?" Nina laughed bitterly and twisted her blade, making him collapse to his knees. The betrayal shattered him. But then, through the pain, resolve took over. He chanted a powerful sealing spell, summoning golden godly flames that bound Nina in chains and cast her into a pit of burning light. 1,000 years, Tong declared coldly. You will stay imprisoned until you remember who you are, the puppet master revealed. Broken in spirit but determined to find the truth, Tong stormed into the throne room. There, sitting on Nina's throne, was an ancient demon, his skin cracked and leaking black mist, his eyes glowing with malevolent light. He clapped mockingly. Bravo, Supreme God. You just killed your own wife. How foolish mortals are, even when they pretend to be gods. Tong's fists clenched. Who are you? I am her father, the demon grinned, baring rows of fangs. And the new ruler of hell. I found the power of the first primal demon, the original curse upon creation. With it, I enslaved Nina and turned her against you. Tong's heart sank as the truth hit him. He had been deceived, manipulated into punishing the woman he loved. You bastard! Tong roared, lunging with his reclaimed sword. The demon king barely flinched, countering with dark energy that sent Tong flying, blood spraying from his mouth. They fought, light against dark, for days. Every time Tong struck, the demon king laughed and retaliated with black fire and curses that made the earth split and rivers of lava pour forth. Wounded and gasping, Tong finally realized, this power is too old, too primal. Only my full godhood can match it. With no choice, Tong cast aside his mortal shell, letting go of pain, love, and regret, and transformed into his true divine form, radiant with godly light and power. Their final clash split the sky and cracked hell's foundations. Firestorms raged, mountains fell, and the very fabric of hell trembled. When the dust settled, Tong stood victorious, his glowing blade at the demon king's throat. The ancient fiend chuckled weakly. I never had a chance, did I? Tong's eyes blazed. Shut up and vanish. His sword fell, and the demon king's soul was obliterated, erased from existence. The sorrowful rebirth. But victory brought no joy. Tong returned to the pit where Nina's soul burned. He gathered her fractured spirit in his hands, golden tears slipping from his eyes. I was too blind. Too late, he whispered. Nina's soul, softened by the divine flame, whispered back, Don't cry, my love. You were tricked. This wasn't your fault. I will make it right, Tong vowed. We will both reincarnate. Start over, together, yes, Nina's fading voice said. We will meet again, on Earth, same time, same place. Tong smiled sadly, and as his own divine essence flared, he turned his soul into pure energy, merging it with hers. Their combined souls rose, leaving hell behind. The end of an era. In heaven and earth, Tong's other wives, Maya Vang and Padalor, watched the skies shift. They knew their husband, the supreme god of all realms, had chosen rebirth. Until he returned, they would guard the balance between heaven, earth, and hell. But in a quiet village somewhere in the future, 2 children would be born at the same hour, and destiny would begin again.